Move that over there. So how's everybody doing tonight? Good?
Very good.
All right. Oops. All right. I would be remiss if I didn't start off by saying that this user group, we're always looking for speakers. And so anybody that has like an interest or there's a topic you like to speak about, even something you're just interested in hearing, if you know of somebody that gives presentations on a specific subject, we're always looking for people. So I always put this slide here just to see if anybody's interested. I'm always amazed at the PyJax user group because they have like 6 or 7 months of speakers all lined up. And it's like it's a miracle if I can get like one speaker lined up. That being said, got the next slide here. I talked a little bit about myself. I started this user group back in 2013. I'm formerly a mobile engineer and an architect. Yes. Yeah, hold on a second. Let me see things. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was a mobile developer, mainly iOS, but also Android for about 8 years, and then the market kind of fell out of that. And so for the last 2 years, I've been doing what I used to do, which was .NET development. I'm also doing some Node.js development as well. And so, having worked with back-end and front-end technologies, I've worked with JavaScript and TypeScript, React in my past and current jobs, uh, C Sharp, .NET, Swift, Objective-C, Kotlin, Java, Python, and SQL. And I blog about this stuff. I have a blog. You can go to feck.io/blog, and I'll post about stuff like this. I'm thinking I'm going to be doing more posting. Um, and then I also have a YouTube channel that's called the Polyglot Engineer. And my GitHub is just github.com/David Fecky. And then I also have two handles I use in social media. One's JaxNode, another one's Polyglot Engine One, which is for the Polyglot Engineer channel. But JaxNode, I primarily like will retweet different articles and posts and stuff like that that I find around JavaScript and Node.js type topics, general web development as well. This presentation, like I was saying before, we've been doing a lot of AI this year, and there's a reason for that. We usually get big turnouts and stuff for when we do presentations that are related to AI. Last month, Michael Demmett was kind enough to come in and do a presentation on Claude Code and different ways that you can use it to go from an idea to production. Um, and we'll continue to do presentations on AI, but I had specific requests to do a non-AI topic tonight. As I was saying before, we primarily cover like JavaScript, Node.js, but we also do associated topics. So we'll do like Kubernetes is an example because that's a software that people use when they're building node applications, microservices. We've done one on Golang before, Mojo. So we cover other topics. It's something that's has to be generally within the same universe as Node.js. So if there's subjects like that you're interested in hearing about, let me know. We cover that stuff. And we also cover a lot of front-end frameworks as well. So in the past, we've done a lot of presentations on React, Angular, Svelte, and we have done a presentation before on Vue.js, but it was literally like 8 years ago. So I figured it'd be a good time to kind of revisit Vue.js. So what we're going to be talking about, we're going to talk a little bit about Evan U, Vue.js, Vite, Nuxt, and micro-frontends. So this is Evan Yu. Evan he was born in China, but he actually came here to the United States to go to college, and he has a degree. I think it's in design. Um, when he graduated, he actually got a job at Google, and started, he was really interested in like JavaScript. And so I think initially he worked with them like I think he might have worked with the Angular team. Uh, but he was interested in actually seeing if he could come up with like, a better way of doing the Vue or the front end type frameworks. And he really liked JavaScript. And so he started building Vue.js in 2013. And since then, he's also created a bunch of other projects like Vite and Vtest. And he's since started a company called Void Zero and works in Singapore now. So that brings us to Vue.js. And how is Vue.js different from the other front end frameworks? So Vue.js actually has, I think, probably a wide range of possible use cases. And so anybody that's done, work with Angular or React for that matter, one of the things you start to realize is that once you start building out like a web page that has like let's say a React application or Angular, it kind of takes over the whole thing generally. And a lot of times there's already pre-existing web applications out there that may not have, they may be pretty static, but they may need to have some interactivity or whatever in part of the page or maybe for the whole page. And the nice thing about Vue.js is that you can literally just drop it in with one script and then start writing Vue.js code inside of your web page. You can also build spas like you can with like React and Angular, and they have a lot of different tooling and stuff for doing that as well. And you can use it for actually building out like simple components like you would like in React or Svelte. Um, but the other frameworks tend to take like an all or nothing type of approach, and Vue.js is meant to be kind of a progressive framework where you can just kind of opt in bit by bit and then start using it more and more. So I think the phrase they use is like progressive development. So you can progressively add Vue into your web app or your web page. So this is kind of like the simplest Vue app right here. We'll actually demo this here in a minute. So if you look at this, you'll see that on line 8 there is a script where we're just going to a CDN and we're pulling in a Vue library. And then down below in the script section, you can see that we are taking that Vue object that's been imported in, and we are dereferencing the create app and the ref. And then inside of the create app function, we're passing in an object, and that object there's a setup method. Think of it as like a constructor. And then at the very end of it, we do a dot mount where we specify, let's say in this case, a div tag where we want it to essentially be able to run its code. They have a templating language that you can use as well. So they use the very common, I think, like double curly braces type of denotation for their variable names. And then for attributes that you want to add inside of your HTML, they usually start with a V dash at the beginning of them. So on this third line right here, you can see that I have an example here where they're doing they're binding to an ID that's going to be for, let's say, a dynamic ID in this case. But they also have a shorthand that you can use with that. So instead of doing the vbind, you can also do like :ID, and that essentially does the same thing as vbind :ID. They also have different attributes you can use. So for instance, if you want to have, let's say, a Boolean value they can use to disable a button as an example, you can just do :disabled and that'll allow you to disable the button. They also have VF and VElse logic you can use for deciding whether or not you want to display or not display like an element. And then if you want to like add functionality to like with a click, in this case, I'm doing the V-on: click, but there's a shorthand for that where you can just use @click. So the event handler in this case is click, and then we're just telling it use this do something function to handle the functionality for that. The other thing that's nice about V-bind is it allows you to do two-way binding. And so with other frameworks, so let's say React as an example, yeah, typically it's like they don't have two-way binding. It's like it's basically it's one way. Um, and then if you want to iterate over, let's take a list or an array, for example, they have a V-4 that you can use to iterate over that. As far as reactivity goes, they actually have this ref variable that we saw on the first example. And that's used for generally for like simple values like strings, numbers, Boolean values, that sort of thing. And then they also have a reactive function you can use, and that's meant so you can work with more reactive type objects. So you can also create components with Vue. So generally, any components are going to be in a .vue file. And then those views are typically split up into two sections. They'll have like a script section, and then they also have a template section. So if anybody here has worked with Svelte at all, this is very similar to the way that Svelte works. And then those components could be imported into other components. So just like with React, where you have components importing other components, you can do the same thing with Vue. The components lifecycle, they have different uh, hooks that you can use. So they have like an unmounted hook, an unupdated hook, and an unmounted hook. And these can be defined directly in your script. If you try to use them inside of a higher order function, let's say like set timeout, it's not going to work. So they have to be independent of like any higher order functions. And then there's some new Vue features that are coming out. So these have not been officially released, but they're in release candidate 2 right now. So the current version of Vue is 3.6. Oh, sorry, 3.5. 3.6 is in release candidate mode. And so the two big things they're adding into the framework is they're adding in signals. So I don't know how people here are familiar with signals, but you can use signals like, for instance, with like solid.js and Angular. And essentially it's a way of being able to do things in a more reactive type way. And they also have like a more slimmed down, lighter weight way that you can initialize Vue called Vapor. And so the main difference between Vapor and the regular version of Vue is that it creates like much smaller files for bundling. And they're claiming that the performance with Vapor is at the same level as Svelte or Solid. And they have a new compilation mode that you can use as well for doing Vue single file components. So let's do a quick demo here. All right. So I'm going to go in here to VS Code and let's blow this up so everybody can see it. There we go. And do that. And I'm just going to come over here to this page and I am going to, let's see if we can open, now, let's just do this. We'll open live with a live server. Okay, so uh, here's our app here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come here to this line here. Uncomment that. So now I'm importing on and I'm going to take the script section here. And this is the exact same script essentially that we saw before in the example. So now I'm coming over here. I'm using the create app to essentially initialize this. I'm creating a variable. But I'm just going to come here. I'm going to change this to the view. And then here, I'm going to change this to name. So you can see that it's returning the name here. And let's do this. And let's go back. And voila. So I didn't have to set up any type of fancy like build system or anything like that. I was just able to kind of drop that in and add that in and be able to use the framework. Let's see here. I think I have some other stuff I'm going to show here. So also in this example here, I have a a Vue application that's scaffolded out. And so you can see here that I just have a index file here, and then the index file, I'm just telling it to import in this script module. And then right here, I have I'm importing in a component that I created. And so in this case, got a couple of different components here. I've got one here for it's just saying like a hello world, but I also have one in here for doing something I have. I have a service that I run for checking out the aviation weather in the area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can't run that. So I believe this is set up here. I think I should just be able to do it like this. All right, so let's do npm run dev. All right, and so here we go. So I have three different components here, Vue components here that are all displaying. But you can see here that one of the things I did was I created a fetch weather component. So this is pulling back the weather for in this case it's KCRG, which is Craig Airport off of Atlantic. If I want to, I can come over here. I can change this to Jacksonville International fetch weather, and there it just called out and loaded the weather right there. And just to kind of see how that component works, if I come back here and go to the view here, you can see what I've done is I have a function here that's just doing a fetch and getting the weather here. But then what I'm doing is I'm taking that data and I'm setting it to a value here. So right here inside of the code, I'm using a VF to just decide whether or not there's any data in there. If there's any data, then it'll go ahead and it'll display the items that are in that. If not, it'll just give me that loading weather thing you might have seen flash a little bit earlier. And then I'm also using V4 in here. And so with this service, it actually is giving me back two weather reports. And so in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just iterating over those weather reports and displaying them inside the component. And let's go back here and I'll kill that. Oops. All right. So let's come back here. All right. So that was demo uno. So the next thing I was going to talk about is Vite. So Vite started off as being the build and bundling system for Vue.js. But as Evan was working on that, there's a couple other projects like, we could really use that too. And it's gotten to the point now where I think the majority of stuff that Evan's working on is related to Vite. But the key thing was that he wasn't happy with Webpack. I think anybody that's worked with Webpack has not been happy with Webpack. And so Vite has been like a really, it's really kind of taken over in the last couple of years. And so the last company I was working at, we were doing a lot of React development, but we used Vite for doing all of the front end bundling and running HMR and all that stuff. So it's also really good for scaffolding as well. So if you need to create, let's say, like a new React project, there used to be a very popular tool called Create React App that people would use just to kind of scaffold out and create a new React app. The people that created that tool are like, don't use that tool anymore. It's like it's too old, too out of date. And so the way that most people, I think, create, let's say, a new React project is they use Create Vite. And so what that'll do is that'll give you an option. And so the options are you can create a new Vite app, you can create a new React app, a new lit app, Svelte, Solid, and there's a framework called Quick as well that they'll do. It also will handle all of the TypeScript, lets you do either a TypeScript or a React version of those frameworks. So it's a really handy tool for generating new projects. But this is primarily used for bundling. And so there's a lot of different tools out there for doing bundling. But one of the things that we need bundling to be fast. So they use ES Build specifically for the development and hot module reloading. They also use Rollup for doing the production builds. And then they're using the new roll down tool, which lets you unify both the production and the development tools into like a single tool. And that tool is actually written in Rust. Um, so Vite was interesting because it was actually developed after ESM was added to the browser. So a lot of the functionality, a lot of the way that it works is based off of, okay, we had ESM, let's build on top of that. And so these included frameworks are generally always bundled with like individual app files. They're bundled as a as needed basis. And so I think a good illustration of that is that typically if you're bundling, let's say, this is really kind of like the way a production app would look, where you have like individual like libraries that you're using, but you also have like modules and routes and stuff like that. And so when you're bundling that up for like, let's say a production build, it bundles up everything at the same time. But if you're using like an ESM based like dev tool, you only need to bundle up and kind of load up the things that you're actually looking at one time. So in this example right here, if you look at the route at the very top, if let's say that's the default route or the index route as an example, it's like you only need to render out the modules and stuff that you need to use. There's no reason to kind of like uh, build everything out. And so that's the way that this tool works, is it just renders the bits and pieces that it needs in order to be able to basically develop the application. So what are the state of the bundlers right now? So I think most projects now have pretty much adopted Vite. Um, like I was saying before, I used Vite at my last company. Vercel is interesting because Vercel is really the kind of like the corporate sponsor between not just Next.js, but also Svelte itself. And they got the guy who actually created Webpack, and he built like a brand new bundling tool called TurboPack. And I believe it's like the default now for I think it's been passing all the tests for a while. And so I think TurboPack is now the default tool. But interesting enough, just like Vite, like the internals of it, it's all written in Rust. And so recently Cloudflare vibe coded a Next clone that runs on Vite. And you can see here I misspelled Vite. Um, and then a lot of people really like using Bun for bundling. And also Bun was recently rewritten in Rust, just like Roll Down. So this little subhead I have hit there at the top here is something I learned from my AI class. So when you look at like embeddings and stuff like that, which you take like a term, subtract like another term, then add like another term, it can create like a brand new value. So if you think of Next.js and you subtract React from that and then add Vue, you get Nuxt. So Nuxt essentially is like the Vue version of uh, of Next.js. Um, So it's meant to be like a like an all-in-one application framework. You can do front end and back end with it. Um, it supports SSG, SSR, and client-side rendering. And then you can set up the rules on how specifically you want the different routes and everything to work by using the define Nuxt config. And underneath the hood, it actually uses something called the Nitro server to kind of like serve up all of the like the server-side code. And uh, I probably shouldn't say this, but unlike Next, it's actually relatively easy to host. So the way the Next structure works is that you typically at the root of your project you'll have like an app directory, and then inside of that app directory you have your assets for your static files, you have your components, you have your layouts, you have your pages, any middleware, any plugins and stuff like that, all set basically underneath that app directory. And then They have these other root folders you can use. So if you have like any content, let's say you have like a blog and your blog's all, let's say markdown files, an example, you can basically host that inside of your content folder. They also have like a layers folder in there, and then they have a public folder for doing like images and robots.txt type files. There is a server folder for like any APIs or event handlers you need to have in the project. And they also have a modules folder for internal modules that you're going to use inside the application. So rendering, this is always the tricky things with frameworks like this is that they have different rendering modes you can use for pages or routes. And so similar to like PHP or Ruby, you can do what's called universal rendering, where the content is essentially it's all rendered on the server. And so I know personally my preference is that if I can render something on the server rather than having the client have to render it, my first preference is to try to do it on the server. Um, they also have client-side rendering, like you'd use like inside of a spa in a browser. They also have static client rendered applications that you can do with it as well. And they have hybrid rendering, which is this is where you can set up those route rules I was talking about earlier, where you can take a page, make it dynamic on the server, but it can also be statically generated as well. And they also have something called edge side rendering, which allows you to render some things on the edge or the CDN side of the network. So that's actually one of Next.js's big claims to fame is that they can actually do some like would normally be like server side processing, they can do it on the edge. And so you can do the same thing with Nuxt as well. So the whole when to use the server over the client, the recommendations they have are, you use server-side rendering when you need to use SEO and you need to have that performance. And the server-side rendering does not allow the usage of the same APIs between the browser and the server. It's an important thing to keep into account. And then servers also incur a cost. So there's a lot of different hosting things that you can do now with like using S3 or Netlify, where you can just kind of host things statically and there's not a server cost associated with that. So client-side rendering, you use that when you need to take advantage of the browser APIs. And then client-side can run offline, which is a nice advantage, and they tend to be cheaper as well to run. But when you're doing client-side, obviously you lose SEO when you do that. So this is kind of an example of like a very simple like Next application. And so something to keep in mind when we're looking at this, you can see that just like with the Vue components that we looked at before, there's a script section and a template section. But the way this actually renders is that if you look at the second line there, where it has counter is equal to ref, and the ref is set to 0, that actually executes in the server and the client environments. And then there's a handle collect event, which is only going to execute on the client side. And so if you look at the template below, they have a handle collect that's associated with that @click event handler. And then they have a counter. And so the counter, it's initially that's going to render from the server, but then any adjustments you make with like the handle click as an example, is going to update it on the client side. So let's do demo number dos. And back here. So go ahead and kill that one. And just start my net. No, I just killed the wrong folder. Hold on one second. Let's do this. All right, let's go to the next sample. And open that up here so we can see that. So here's our Nuxt example app. And you can see right here that I have a app with a view here. So this is a index page, and then I have like an about page. And then I have like a little nav here that I set up here. So I'm just gonna come over here and run this. This is like the most simple like Nuxt app you could possibly write. Because here, this is running on port 3000. So if I come in here and take a look at that, right now it's on the home page. It's like about, it's taking me to the about page, coming back. That's all rendering on the server, but it's using Vue to do all that. All right. So we come back. All right. So if you're interested in learning more about this, there's actually great resources and stuff online. It's one of the things that's kind of unique about Vue is that Evan You, originally being from China, one of the things that he did is that he made sure that all the documentation was documented in English, but there's actually really good Chinese documentation as well. So it's very popular in China because of that, because they did such a good job of documenting the framework in Chinese. But they do have these Vue Mastery and Vue schools that you can check out, and they also have a Scrimba course here. And don't worry about having to write any of this stuff down. I've got a QR code at the end of the presentation that you can use to pull up the slides and all this information. So that brings us to micro front ends. So I think this is a good opportunity to talk about micro front ends because I don't think anybody's discussed micro front ends so far at this user group. I'm gonna take a quick swig of water here. So has everybody here heard of micro front ends? Okay. So one way of thinking about this is probably not the best way, is that, we have microservices where you can kind of like take your monolithic application, break it out over like multiple services. And there's pluses and minuses with doing that. And that's the same thing with micro front ends. You can actually break your app up into, essentially different, on one page, you can have different components that are all coming from different repositories, code repositories. So it's very easy to go through and kind of break up a lot of the functionality. If you have like parts of a page, for example, that are dealing with functionality that the other part of the page has nothing to do with, might be a use case where you can use micro front ends. The other thing that's nice about this is it's possible to set up like different teams and have different teams work on different parts of a web application. And then you can also take these components and they can operate independently from each other. And so they can exist out of sync. So there's a project we're working on in my current company where this is something that we're looking to do because there's literally are different teams that are working on different parts of a web app. And they want to be able to essentially roll out like their version without having it affect other people. So it's like right now, if you're making any like front end changes, it's all got to be released at the same time. So everything's got to be, so it's like a monorepo right now. But they want to set it up to where you can do these like independently. The other thing that's neat about micro front ends, it's also possible to actually build and develop components in different frameworks. So if you want to have Svelte, React, and Vue.js all on the same web page, you can do that. So that's another thing that's nice about micro front ends. So there's a lot of different ways of running micro front ends. So the example I have tonight is actually it's an Astro. Astro has this concept called islands. They actually have server islands and client-side islands. But the thing that's nice about that is you can actually run React, Svelte, Vue, all in different islands on the same page. Next.js can also run micro front ends using a module federation. So there's actually a project called model-federation.io, and they have instructions on how you can set up Webpack or TurboPack to be able to configure your app to be able to do micro front ends. And there's even a .NET project for Blazor. It's called the Parallel framework. And Parallel also lets you have this capability of doing micro front ends as well. And these can all be configured using Webpack or RSpec. And there's also a Vite plugin for doing it as well. And Nuxt uses the later approach with something called slots for being able to use this type of functionality. So typically with micro front ends, you have these are the frameworks that people are using. So there's something called single SPA, which is a micro front end framework you can use for building out your frameworks. I mentioned module federation earlier. Astro lets you do this, and also you can just use an iframe and host the components just like inside of their own iframe. But you'll see I have in parentheses next to that. Please don't do this. So if I never see another iframe the rest of my life, that'll be too soon. So Astro's island integrations, this also supports multiple frameworks, uses the islands architecture, so allows developers to create areas inside of their site or on their page where they can render various front-end components. There's support in Astro for Vue.js, React. I'm not sure why I have React written 3 times there. Lit, Svelte components all on the same page. And then if you need to, let's say React into your Astro application, there's an npx command you can use for Astro. Just do npx Astro add React, and that will add the React framework. You need to add Svelte, you can do npx Astro add Svelte, and then same thing for Vue. All right, so let's demo that here real quick. And I'm going to kill this. All right. And so let's blow this up a little bit here. So what I did here is I created an Astro application, and then so this is using standard, Astro components here. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to create 2 different components all on the same page. One, I wanted to have a React example here, so I did this React example here. And then I did one here for Vue. So this is written in Vue. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. All right. So Astro is kind of neat because it's actually the default dev port is 4321 because they have a Rocket theme. So I'm just come back here. All right. So here in this component, I've got Astro, React, and Vue. So I've got this React component right over here. And so if I come up here and I click on that, you can see here that it's reacting to that. And then I have a Vue component over here where I can come over here and I can increase and decrease that. So this is all running, it's running Vue, React, and Astro all on the same page. So this is kind of an example of something you can do with a micro front end. I'm not really sure why you want to create a page with 2 different counters on it, but you do have the capability of doing that with Astro and micro front ends. All right, let's go back.
Is there a server-side rendering in Astro?
Yes, yeah. So it's for the server side on Astro. They have their own like templating system they use. So Astro kind of started off as being kind of like a static site generator. So like I don't know if you're familiar with Gatsby. There's a bunch of them out there now. Technically, you can use Nuxt or Nuxt as static site generators, but what started to happen is it just started to develop out like, well, we want to be able to do like front end things, and so they added the islands architecture, but they can do server side and client side in the Astro as well. So what do we talk about tonight? I mentioned that I'm always looking for speakers. Vue.js is a very popular front-end framework. Vite's even more popular. It's very fast at scaffolding and bundling tool as a bundling tool. Nuxt is kind of like their version of Next, and it's also based on Vue.js. And then micro front ends are a way of developing a front end the way that you do with like a microservice backend. That's the best way I can think of describing that. And here's a QR code. So if you want to take a look at the source code for this and or the slides, I'll have that all online. And then we'll take the recording of this and we'll make it available on YouTube in a couple days as well. So, any questions?
Curious about the Astro bundling process. So if you were doing a production build, you had multiple frameworks, Vue, React, stuff, etc. Is it going to bundle each of those frameworks separately, or is it all going to be in one bundle, one file?
Let's take a look. Let's see what happens. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how it does it because I've never actually pushed anything to production with Astro that used multiple frameworks. So right here, they've got a build. So let's go ahead and run build. All right. And I believe they create like a dist folder here. And so there's an Astro file, and we can see here that, so it looks like it took the view. Yeah. So it just put these into their own components. So it did them as separate files, but it did bundle each one individually.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Not really a question, but we can do additional micro-frontends that we do.
Yeah. So I have to be honest, I have a lot of misgivings about micro front ends. I think the practicality, like there's something we're trying to do where I work right now, because we do literally have like teams that work on different components, and they don't want to be withheld. They don't want to be basically limited by having to like do everything at, like rebuild the entire application and push up. They just want to be able to do like individual components and be able to push those from repo. And so the real advantage with micro front ends is the ability to kind of be able to do stuff independently from other teams. And so you can literally like you can have one section of a web application or a web page even and have different teams deploy on different schedules. You don't have to worry about everybody being kind of coordinated. You can just kind of do it in, whenever you're ready to release your application. Yes.
How would you do routing?
In a
Yeah.
So the examples that I was giving, I mean, are really kind of independent of routing, but they do have examples. If you go to the, see here, if you go to the Module Federation, their website, they have examples and stuff on how to set this up and how to do routing and all that.
And the Vue has, from what I remember, Vue has a router similar to React.
Yes.
It's very similar.
Yeah, I didn't get into that tonight just because we were covering like a lot of different things. But yeah, it's like just like with React and stuff, they have like their own router that you can use as well. The thing is about React is that there's more than one. There's like a bunch of different routers and stuff that you can use. And
The one that we built with the app router with was tremendous. Actually, it's new like version 17 our
yeah.
came with the Next.js.
Yeah. So yeah, we could probably do like a whole presentation just on routing and all that. The last time I worked at, we had a web app that we worked on, and the majority of it was just a pure React app using the React router. And so one of the problems that we had with that was so it was never really like fully like SEO safe. We designed the routes so that they looked like actual like page routes, but it was React router behind the scenes doing that. But it was was a neat app to work on. But it's one of those things after you start working on a React app for a while, it's like you start realizing, what the pluses and the minuses are of working with React. And we ran into like, the typical issue that a lot of people run in is like when you have like multiple components on a single view, and then you do something, you make an update to, one object that's trying to manage state, and then everything in that chain of objects re-renders when you only need to re-render like the one thing. And so you start learning about all the intricacies of, making sure that I forget what the different hooks are, like minimalization, that sort of thing, where you can essentially kind of force it not to re-render those components. And I know there's a React compiler now, and I've been kind of out of this for a year. So the company I was working for last year, I stopped working for them in September, and I've been working just doing back end stuff for like the last since November. So I have one of the things that I was happy about doing this presentation tonight was that like my front end skills are starting to get rusty. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity to learn something new. I have not used Vue in my work life, but one of the people I worked at my last job was a huge fan of Vue, a huge fan of Nuxt. He used to work at Beeline. They used Nuxt at Beeline. And so I figured it's like we haven't done anything in Vue in a long time. So I figured it's probably about time to do a Vue presentation.
What I know is both Vue and Svelte are much better and I mean much easier to deal with memorization.
Yeah.
Kind of automatic or semi-automatic.
So that's the interesting thing. It's interesting you bring that up because like one of the things that about 5 years ago we did a number of presentations on Svelte. Uh, And Svelte was like one of the first like frameworks that really did come up with like their own like compiler. So when you're doing Svelte, it's like they have like Rich Harris built his own compiler for taking all the Svelte components and stuff, and then essentially rendering out all the bits and pieces of it. Um, so that was kind of like a novel approach. And now there's a React compiler, which I have not had a chance to really use, but it's supposed to do like a lot of the stuff, like the stuff that you used to have to use like special hooks for and stuff, or you just get for free now if you're using the compiler. But I have not used the compiler, so I can't say like how well it works. And
From the so using that for any of these books.
No, you don't have to use it.
Yeah,
No, with the new React.
including your
so,
did for years for so you
so they have a whole web page talking about it, incremental adoption.
the pension the always handling stable data, still lose all this cash stuff, still big problem we have.
One of my yeah. My favorite quotes about software engineering is the two hardest things to do in software engineering is naming things and knowing when to validate cache. And React is a perfect example of that. I mean, they've had Go ahead.
Do you think AI is naming things?
Um, It's definitely helped us with writing a lot more code a lot faster. But I don't know if it's I'm sure that like if you're, one of the things that you can do, especially like with skills as an example, is you can set up like naming conventions. And then if your AI is using those skills, then you know that, unlike, some smart ass developer and stuff like that, it's just going to follow and do what the skills tell it to do. It's kind of like, if you're trying to write like a hacking agent and you put it into a sandbox, it's going to try to break out of that sandbox and get into Hugging Face. So,
Yeah, there's a small story on this. At my job, we had to create a new table for something, and weren't sure what naming it, it was similar concept to another table that we had.
Yeah,
So ask AI, do some optional or name recommendations for this. This is what the table is. This is what it's supposed to do. Even a list of names. I haven't let it out. They already shared the list with a colleague and went back and forth. We like doing them for a while. So it saved time for just adding for controversy.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because like if you've worked long enough doing this, one of the things that you'll come across is like some of the early jobs I had, like people would name things like tables and variables and stuff like that that didn't make any sense because they thought it was job security. Like they can't fire me because if they fire me, nobody will know what any of this stuff is. They just name things like completely different, than what they were supposed to be. Or they use codes and stuff. And then when I was at LPS, which became Black Knight, it's now named something else, like they use like railroad terminology for like loans and mortgages and stuff like that. So they had like a different process, like in a mortgage or whatever, is called a spike. And it's just like they just named everything after because I think it's because the building was like right next to a big railroad depot and stuff. And it's like it didn't make any sense either. So
I know some people who name everything based off the DC universe. They got like Galactus.
yeah, I'd be surprised if like if you start running into intellectual property issues when you name stuff like that. Like there's some companies are a lot more protective of their trademarks than others. Like Disney is like famously like really, really protective of their trademarks. Like I worked at a company where we do like these ads and you'd have like product samples like in the background of the ad, and you couldn't use anything from Disney because like they were very, very litigious. So
It's closed source. Are they gonna do that?
they won't, but unless it leaks. So yeah, it's one of the things that's interesting was like we're talking a little bit about Bun earlier, and Bun was recently acquired by Anthropic, and one of my favorite like uh, moments of like I guess drama in the software world was Bun was originally written in a language called Zig. It's a systems level programming language, and it's kind of a neat project. And the guy who runs the project is based like out of Portland, Oregon, and he's got like a small team, and they have like enough funding to kind of keep the language going and stuff. And so Bun was like one of the first like well-known projects that was written in Zig. But they were starting to have some problems with like memory leaks and that sort of thing. That they had just these bugs were just open. They hadn't ever fixed them. And so they opened up a branch, I think a couple months ago, to do it in or start, like a rewrite in Rust. Well, since they're owned by Anthropic, right, they have access to all the latest models and stuff like that. And they set up Cloud Code on this job where it ran like straight for like 11 days. And I said, look, we want to rewrite this branch from Zig into Rust. And we know there's going to be a ton of bugs and stuff like that, but we have like every single part of the application, we've got like unit tests. So just keep on running like, in a loop until every single one of those bugs is fixed. And so they did it. And after 11 days, it was completely rewritten in Rust. And the guy who started they did a big blog post where they talked about it and stuff like that. But the guy that created the Zig language just went on this tirade talking about like what a horrible programmer the creator of Bun was, and all these things were fixable and stuff like that, just using Zig, and just went on. It sounded really petty. It was like one of the most like petty like blog posts I've seen in a long time. But the thing is, the interesting thing to me about that was the fact that it's over 1 million lines of code, and they used an agent to rewrite the whole thing from, you know, from Zig into Rust. And it's been, they haven't officially released it yet. It's gonna be Bun version 1.4. But Bun now is, as of 1.4, will be completely in Rust. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, the tirade part was interesting. But the thing that was really interesting to me is really more of a commercial for Anthropic, because it's like, hey, look, you want to rewrite your entire code base from one language to another? We can do that for you. It'll only cost you $165,000. So when they added up all the AI credits and stuff that they used to get Cloud Code to, you know, run it for 11 days straight, just fixing all these bugs, it cost $165,000. But if you were to hire 3 engineers to rewrite the program in Rust, just 3 people to do it, it'd take like over a year to do that, most likely. And the fact they did it in 11 days is pretty remarkable. But yeah, it was funny seeing people's reactions to that.
It hasn't been released globally yet, so like that.
It's the Canary release. So if you're using Bun, if you do like Bun space upgrade dash Canary, it will install the Rust version. It's a smaller binary than the Zig binary was. So, but like you're saying about how's anybody going to know, stuff like that. One of the mistakes they made with Cloud Code, one of the reasons why they bought Bun was because Cloud Code uses Bun to bundle up and turn into an application they can use on the CLI. And so I think it was like a month ago or whatever, they accidentally included all the source maps in the release. So anybody could go and view all the source code of Cloud Code. And that, it's like for a company that, prides itself on AI safety and stuff, that was kind of like a very unsafe thing to do. All right, well, that is all I had. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I think next month, we're probably gonna be doing a joint meetup between the JaxNode user group and the Java user group. They've got a speaker lined up that's supposed to be pretty good, so I'll have some details out for that a little bit later. So let me go ahead and turn this off. There we go.